An inside look at covering the Rio Olympics from two top reporters, next on Carpe Diem. Hello, I'm Marc Rosenweig, Associate Professor in the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. During a panel discussion at the Yogi BerraMuseum and Learning Center on the MSU campus, I talked with two reporters who covered the Rio Olympics. Bruce Beck is the lead sportscaster for NBC4 in New York. He's covered the Olympics for more than a decade, and he's a 9-time Emmy Award winner. Karen Crouse is a New York Times correspondent and a leading writer on sports and society. She was honored by the Associated Press as one of the top 10 beat reporters in our country. I asked Bruce Beck about the challenges of covering the Rio Olympics.
The build-up to this one was the most nerve-wracking. There was trepidation everywhere. This was going into a games with concern about contaminated water, the Zika virus, an economy that was in flux, a president who had been impeached, the favelas, concerned about express kidnapping, which is when young kids between the ages of 8 and 12 surround you, take you to an ATM machine, make you take out money, and then you have to relinquish the money, and then they disband. All of these things went on before we even got there.
So we landed at the airport to out-of-work policemen or policemen who hadn't been paid.
Oh, that's another story.
With a banner saying "Welcome to Hell."
Yes.
So you know that was not exactly
You might have to go online and find that picture
confidence. But
going into these games, there was more concern than ever. There's always concern at the Olympics. Beijing, we were worried about smog. Athens, we were worried about terrorism. Torino, we were worried about snow. I mean, there's
lack thereof.
Yeah, there was no snow. There's always concern. In London, we were worried about the weather going in. At the first one, Salt Lake, there was the whole concern following, 9/11. So there's something to worry about. But this one, there were 5 things to worry about going into the games, and I don't think, I had a comfort level during my entire summer because the 3-4 weeks before you're nervous. What do you pack in terms of bug spray, in terms of how to prepare for it? But I agree with Karen. I think that Rio did a fantastic job. They really did. I mean, it's never fun. People said, "Did you have fun at the Olympics?" No, it's a great experience, but it's not fun. We're working 20 hours a day. I would go to sleep close to 4 and get up at 8 for 20 some odd straight days. That's what the Olympics is. It's phenomenal to cover, but it's a grind and it's demanding on your body. And as a journalist, you have to accept that's what the responsibility is.
And how do you decide how you're going to share your time between covering events and covering issues? How do you make that determination when these issues pop up?
Well, for us, it's what's the news of the day? Like, does the news supersede doing a feature? And we have to see what happens. What happens in terms of big storylines, which we'll get to, I'm sure, with Ryan Lochte. What happens in terms of an athlete, getting injured. But then we can do an interesting story on someone who overcame odds. Because the Olympics really are an event where it's storytelling. The beauty of the Olympics to me is the myriad of stories about individuals who have overcome something or who have been dedicated to something and who are representing their country. That is, to me, the most fun about covering the Olympics, and that's what NBC loves to kind of share with their audience, the storyline and the journey. I think that's what it's all about. So we have to kind of balance between the news of the day, and I have 3 shows or 4 shows I've got to do, and trying to get ahead on the next project. So you're always behind. Even if you're ahead, you're behind.
Karen, you were talking earlier about a book you're working on that has a lot to do with some of these personalities. Well, just give us a sneak preview if you can.
I wanted to just go back and piggyback off of what Bruce said on that question. First off, so this was my 10th Olympics. I've covered every Summer Olympics starting in '92. And I actually worked the '84 Olympics because I was in college in Los Angeles. So I was a hostess for those Olympics. So the beauty at working at the New York Times is we have so many people that I was able to cover just one event, one sport. I did swimming the first 8 days. So unlike Bruce, where you're probably going all over the place, I had the luxury of waking up every day knowing what my assignment was going to be. But the really surreal thing is when you're in one of these far-flung locations, you have no idea how the event is being played back home. And you get an idea of how it's playing and what is important and what is getting a lot of attention by the story requests that come into you, that trickle in from New York. So as an example for me, cupping became a huge deal. So all of a sudden my sports editor is saying to me, I would cover prelims in the morning and then I would have a few hours to sort of get an early story written for the finals. And all of a sudden my sports editor is saying to me, we need a story on cupping.
I did it after the Olympics.
And we should say, just so everybody in the audience
cupping,
knows,
if any of you
they take
watched the
these
swimming, Michael
suction
Phelps
cups.
had these really red circles. It looked like he had steroid measles or something, measles on steroids. But what it is it's this Eastern practice of getting blood flow to muscles and to sore spots. And he had been doing this for 2 years, and I had seen it at several meets, and you just don't think it's a big deal, but all of a sudden you're getting these close-ups of Michael Phelps, of his back when he's on the blocks, and people are wondering, not unreasonably, what are these giant circles? And so these become the stories that you have to react to, that you really have no idea why they're asking you these questions because you're not seeing the coverage back home.
What did you find out about that? Did it give him an advantage? What's your
Well,
view?
I don't know what you found, but
I
it's kind
did
of
the cupping, and I'm
sketchy.
still not an
People-
Olympian. I mean,
You know, here's
it
the
helped
thing.
maybe with my recovery, but you know,
Here's the thing with athletics. If you believe it will help you, it will help you.
that's a great point.
And so he firmly believes it helps. You could find plenty of people who say it's like taking a sugar pill or something like that. But he firmly believes it helps his recovery. So I would say to you, it definitely helps his recovery. But
the preparation, okay? We want to talk about that for a minute because, Bruce, you are known as the king of preparation. In fact, when you and Ian were here to be honored, Ian was talking about all the files that you had at the time in your garage that you say have now taken over your basement as well. Give us a sense of how you prepared for this Olympics.
This was just a small part of my Olympic prep. So before the Olympic Games, I'll come up with stuff like, oh, the Olympics are 17 days from this date, August 5th to August 21st. It's the first South American city to host the Olympic Games. There are 554 members of the U.S. team. It's represented in the Olympics by 27 sports, 40 disciplines, 189 returning Olympians. You could do all that ahead of time. And then as you go along, each athlete I had to cover. Frank Molinaro, who was a wrestler from New Jersey. And a matter of fact, his wife gave birth while he was at the Games. That was a great story for us. Ibtihaj Muhammad, the first Muslim American to compete with a hijab. Beautiful story about a beautiful woman who also won a silver medal with the women's, I guess it was a bronze medal for the women's saber team. Sydney McLaughlin, a 17-year-old teenager from Union Catholic High School who's going to be a star. She didn't get a medal. Shakur Stevenson, a boxer from Newark. Dagmara Wozniak, who came from Poland, and the wonderful story about emigrating here and going to St. John's. So Nick DiPopolo, who ate a pot brownie and was disqualified from the Games in 2012, but returned and wanted to prove that it wasn't something that was done maliciously, that the pot brownie just was at a competition, was just at an event that he went to. And Matt Emmons, who shot at the wrong target when he was going to win the gold medal. He was one of our shooters. So, I mean, everything is a storyline, and you try to come up with material that'll help you when you get to the actual event, because you can do the preparation, and I think the important thing is to be ready to see what unfolds. But as Karen knows, you can go into an event and think that this is the storyline, and it's not. So you have to follow it through. But if you're doing personality-driven pieces, this stuff really helps you, and you can't remember every athlete and what goes on. So I think preparation as a research tool is crucial, especially the Olympics. I covered probably 14 different sports. And I don't know every sport, but I can go back and review and come up with material that'll help me do my stories.
You better be ultra prepared by the time you land at the Olympic venue, because the access to the athletes is very limited at any Olympics. You're really, the only real shot you have after events is as they're going through being paraded through the mixed zone. And that's like a mosh pit of people, and people just shouting out questions. So you can't even be sure that you're going to be able to ask the question you need to ask. So the pre-preparation is key. I was going to meets in the summer of 2015 getting research done. I did a piece that ended up being the gift that kept on giving in this Olympics of the Hungarian swimmer Katinka Hasu, who won the 400 IM, shattered the world record. She got beaten by an American in the 200 back. She won the 200 IM. Other than Katie Ledecky and Michael Phelps, she had the best Olympics. Well, I started reporting a story on her in Kazan, Russia in 2015, and probably went to 4 meets and went to Budapest to spend time with her for that. So it's almost the 18 months before the Olympics, you're doing all of the work to gather all of this information. We did this really cool thing with Game Stories where I would be writing things as the race was happening, and then file absolutely at the end of the race, if not even what we call B copy before the final. And a photographer was taking photos that he could almost instantaneously add to the story. And so we were sending out these bursts within a minute of the final touch of a passable game account of what had occurred. So it was a different kind of writing. You're almost like writing captions for photos you haven't seen, and then you would go back and make it as you would try to then just keep making it better. But this is the brave new world we're in, where we're just trying to figure out how best to present the information.
And we have to couple it with social media. So right. I'm doing so many posts for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook while all of this is going on. And I'm trying to do my interviews, I'm trying to write my broadcasts, and I'm trying to send out my tweets and get everything out there because it's instantaneous. So that's the challenge. More than anything else going into the games, in addition to doing all the features that I would do on an athlete who I'm going to follow up on there, I would build a reservoir of contacts. That's the key. Yeah. And most of them were family members because you can't always get in touch with the athletes. So I had every mother, father, grandmother, aunt, every possible contact, every number I could get. In addition to the contacts for the PR people for the sports, those are the ones that you want to personalize the story with. And as the games unfold, you might pick up a contact or a new agent that's now representing Lori Hernandez. How can I get a hold of Lori? Well, I can't get the mom today, but I can get a hold of the agent. So that's part of the challenge too.
A familiar lament is often, oh, but I interviewed this athlete and they didn't really have anything to say. And that's why the ancillary relationships are key. What parent alive doesn't love to talk about their child? So if you're ever working on a profile of someone, parents usually are gold mines, or coaches, siblings. They'll tell you things that will frankly embarrass the athletes, but they're gold.
And sometimes they're characters too.
Yes.
I did a piece on Dalila Muhammad, who was a 400-meter track star, 400-meter hurdles, who actually won the gold medal. She's from Cardozo High School in New York. And so you know, I couldn't get a hold of Dalila during the competition because she was really engaged in her preparation, but I found the folks and I did a walking piece with them. I heard from the mom and the dad. I got a hold of the high school track coach in New Jersey. I found the club where she trained as a 7-year-old and got a hold of her initial coach. So you can bring a story together without ever having the athlete in the story, because you're making something happen about her life, her dream, or whatever it might be. You've got to get creative. You've got to really be able to figure out ways to present the story sometimes without the principle, which is part of the new world.
And also, I had something happen in week 2, which always happens at every Olympics. So I got sent out to track before my life became consumed by Ryan Lochte. I got sent out to track to do the men's triple jump. And so I was told this American is going to try to break this long-standing world record, so really pay attention to that. So I have triple jump on the brain. And so this American does win, but he doesn't break the world record. But the silver medalist is also an American, and he goes into the stands afterward and proposes to his girlfriend.
Oh, that's great.
But as if that wasn't cool enough, his girlfriend was an Olympic hurdler who had missed this team by 1 place, and as he proposed to her, her race, the hurdles, was being run on the track, and he didn't even think she was going to be able to come to Rio because it was going to be so heartbreaking for her to witness her event being held on the same day that her boyfriend was competing. So I just thought this was the best story. I was so proud of myself. Well, unbeknownst to me, while I'm waiting to talk to these triple jumpers, the women's 5,000 meters is going on. And I don't know if you guys remember, but that was the race where the American and a New Zealand athlete, they collided on the track. And the American ended up picking up the New Zealand athlete, and the American was pretty badly injured, but they both finished the race. And the American was immediately taken to be treated. And the New Zealand woman came through the mixed zone, the mosh pit, and because I didn't know this, because I'm looking for the triple jumpers, she talked about how this is what the Olympics is all about, this great act of sportsmanship, and I never would have finished the race if not for this American who urged me on and said we must finish, and just a terrific moment, and I was right there and I missed it. So in some ways I feel like I missed one of the best stories of the games. It was right under my nose, but
It's
what are
tough.
you going to do?
It's very hard.
But you didn't miss the Ryan Lochte story. Neither of you did.
Well,
right?
I was.
Take us behind the scenes of that coverage.
So I was out at golf that Sunday. The swimming ended Saturday night, and Sunday was the final round of golf. And so I went out on the course, and I never bring my phone when I'm on the course because I'm always afraid I'll forget to put it on vibrate and it will go off and I'll earn the, this death glare from a golfer. But I wasn't able to I was getting spotty internet, but I noticed on Twitter that Ryan Lochte was trending, and I thought, that cannot be good. So I made my way back into the press room and looked, and sure enough, saw that Ryan Lochte had been robbed at gunpoint.
With a gun to his head?
A gun to his head. And now, it probably sounded crazy when it came back, the initial reports came back to the States. But as Bruce had said earlier, we were hearing so many stories of people being robbed and in really dramatic fashion, so nothing really sounded too far-fetched.
Going into the games, this was one of the big concerns, was security and how the Rio police would handle themselves, and they ended up getting the military involved with even us going through, our traditional security checkpoints. And so when you heard this stuff, at first I don't think anyone was clear as to all of the facts. It was a little bit strange.
Very murky,
it came in kind of murky, and it also was Ryan Lochte, because
I think if it had been anyone else other than Michael or Katie, it wouldn't have gotten the attention. But in some ways, Ryan is more popular than Michael because he has, as I ended up writing, he's sort of the alter ego of Michael. Michael was the singularly focused, hyper-focused, super serious, never missed a practice in his prime years leading up to 2008.
And Lochte always got in trouble for something.
Lochte was the goofball who ate 2 Big Macs before the 400 IM and got sick.
He was handsome, he had the girlfriends, he was
everyone
aloof.
loved him, yeah. So he in some ways was more popular. So the fact that he was at the center of this really made it a much bigger story.
But one of the biggest things I think that Rio was concerned about was they had done such a good job in terms of trying to figure out how to handle the security and how to be very professional. And now all of a sudden, here came an athlete who was basically undermining what they were trying to accomplish for the games, which was to try to show that they knew what the heck they were doing and that they were professional. And this embarrassed Rio, it embarrassed the government, it embarrassed the police, and that's why they took such a hard stance and did such an incredible job in investigating what happened at the gas station.
So when Ryan did the Billy Bush interview, that immediately raised red flags among the enforcement officers in Rio because they deal with crime every day. This stuff happens every day, sadly, there, and not just once or twice a day. But the thing that didn't ring true to them, that immediately made them think there was something off about Ryan's story, is that their experience is that a gunman who puts a gun to your head, never backs down if you resist. That if you resist, you are going to be shot. So Ryan's story of resisting, well, I didn't do anything wrong, so whatever, that immediately raised the red flags among the law enforcement officers. And because they felt so under siege, like, you people think we can't keep our country safe, they made it a point to investigate this. And
there were loopholes really everywhere in this story, because in the gas station they claimed that the vandalism was done, and then they had to pay in order to be released from the gas station for the vandalism that they committed. And that sounds strange. Like, can you imagine doing something and then having to pay to get out? And, you know, always in life, the cover-up's worse than the crime. And Lochte would have been best off here. The simple thing is, be honest, you guys screwed up. It was late at night. You vandalized the gas station, you know, come forward, admit it, and the story would have gone away. But because now Rio saw the reputation tarnished and they're on the line here, they've got to prove what exactly happened with Lochte and the other 3 swimmers. And now the story became the biggest story of the second week. And by the way, for TV, we really needed a story because we had gotten through the first week, and now I must have led the news 7 or 8 straight days. Instead of covering Olympics, which is what I came there to cover, the games, the coverage, the competition, I was covering every aspect of the Lochte story. And I was working with NBC Network, and we all tried to piece this together because it was puzzling, it was confusing in every regard. It was just absolutely taking over the entire Olympics.
There are a lot of lessons to be learned from this. First off, as a journalist, sometimes it just helps to be in the right place at the right time. Ryan's story never gets out if not for an Australian journalist who is going to a hotel to interview one of his swimmers, one of his country's swimmers, and ended up on a shuttle bus back with Ryan's mother. And he said, "Oh, are you Ryan's mother?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "You look a little, you know, upset. Did something happen?" And she said, "Well, my son just got robbed at gunpoint." So I still am unclear how it happens that this event occurs in the middle of the night, and this 32-year-old man calls his mom and tells her what happened. I think most grown children would have hid this information from their mother if for no reason other than not wanting to worry her needlessly.
I didn't call my mom and tell her I was on the show today, by the way, before I got here.
We're not robbing anybody.
But
hopefully.
so here was a man who was just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and he was the one who first reported it.
And she might have messed it up, the mom. We don't know.
Well, it just caught fire from there. And
because
then,
that was one of the first things. Oh, he lied to his mother.
Right.
And
Well,
We don't know if he lied to his mother or if she lied to us or if she really didn't get the facts straight. That whole thing with the mom was puzzling.
Right.
So lesson number 2, and this is for journalists, is that there were some people who bought Ryan's story hook, line, and sinker and just reported it as if it were absolute truth. And, you know, we're all in a hurry to get it first and get a headline and get it out on social media. And a lot of people ended up backtracking because they talked to people in Ryan's circle who obviously are invested in perpetuating this story. And I remember Mr. Lochte being interviewed, Ryan's dad, and saying, oh yeah, and when he got home, the first thing he did was go out and buy a wallet to replace the one that had been stolen. Well, then the video surfaces that shows him putting his wallet through the security. So as a journalist, it's really hard, and I know I was even chomping at the bit because I felt like, oh, I'm supposed to be the premier swimming authority, and we don't have this story up yet, and everyone else has this story up, but we were trying to ferret out the facts from the fiction, and it became very difficult to do.
Journalism point number 3, omission versus commission.
Right.
Know your facts before you try to come up with the story, and make sure you've done your due diligence. With NBC News, and I'm working with all of those people, we had information that we wouldn't release until it was confirmed. So in many cases, we have to have it confirmed by 2 different sources. You can't run with a story, or you can't run with the facts.
Well with Billy Bush.
Well,
though.
yeah,
I was just going to bring that up. We had,
but now we're
interesting,
trying.
Billy Bush is with Ryan Lochte, and then he's with Donald Trump.
Just,
What does this
we
tell us?
we were trying to still get it done.
If you see Billy Bush coming toward you for an interview, run the other way. You don't want.
In part 2 of our discussion, we'll hear more about covering the Rio Olympics, including the impact of social media. Thanks to BerraMuseum Director Dave Kaplan for co-sponsoring the panel. For more information on this or any edition of Carpe Diem, contact us at carpediem@montclair.edu or call 973-655-5158. I'm Marc Rosenweig for all of us at Montclair State University. Thanks for watching Carpe Diem.